So, I am excited to be talking about this topic with a favorite colleague of mine, and she is just unbelievable. Her name is Dana Anglo White, and she's a registered dietitian nutritionist. She has a master's degree, and she has all this alphabet soup letters after her name. So she does all these things. She's the author of 9 textbooks. She is a sports dietitian and a clinical professor of athletic training and sports medicine at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut. But she's also a writer, and actually, she writes to so many magazines and websites. And how I found her, well, I knew her for 100 years, but I found her because I was looking at this topic of fiber, and lo and behold, where it takes me to a couple articles that she wrote. So I said, that's it, she's coming back. And so, Miss Dana, how are you?
I am well. I am well. I am so glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, always a pleasure, always a pleasure. Listen, uh, fiber has become a unbelievably trending food, or I should say component in foods, and looking for foods that are high in fiber. And to the point now we have something called fibermaxxing, which I'll get to at the end of this or later on the episode. So, let's rewind and start all over. Can you tell our listeners and viewers what is fiber and what it does in the body?
Can you believe us two
I
dietitians
know.
sitting here talking about fiber? We've been doing this for how long, right? And
I'm
now,
not I'm not
now,
telling you the years, but yeah, okay, go ahead, right.
but now people want to listen, right?
I
It's
know.
so interesting. So, yeah, so the article that maybe you came across was me sort of realizing this trend that like fiber is the new protein. So, the way everyone's talking about protein, now
Right.
everybody's talking about fiber. So, fiber is what it always was, right? It's this undigestible substance. I think that's the first thing that is sort of unique about it. It is an undigestible substance in most, not all, or maybe many carbohydrate rich foods. So if it's not a
Hmm.
carb, it's not fiber is not an option. And then there's some nuances to it, but yeah, I mean that's what it is. It is this naturally existing substance in plant-based foods that everybody's talking about now.
It's interesting because Dana and I both know this. As she said, it's indigestible. So I want you to visually think about this, that when you take fiber-rich foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, legumes, and you consume them, and the fiber, your body doesn't digest it, so it keeps going through the GI tract, right? Kind of like a broom that sweeps out things, and Dana's going to go into it, and then out you go into your stool. So Dana's going to go into this laundry list of things that fiber does in your body, but I want you to remember you don't even absorb it. And so I mean, just think about this. So think about that in your head when she's going through this laundry list of things that fiber does for you.
And I
So
think it's like important too to visualize. So it's like whatever food has fiber, like you are digesting and absorbing the other components of that food, right? It's just the fiber that is going to make its way through.
very good. See how she corrects me all the time? And this is
Ah.
why I am interviewing her and she is not interviewing me. Okay, Dana, there are different types of fiber. So can you go into that for us?
Sure. Okay. So there's two main types in food. There is soluble and insoluble. Okay. So pretty simple. And the different types are going to do different things, right? But also, in terms of structure, are going to be different. So one of them is soluble in water and one of them is not, right? So soluble fiber is going to swell, it's going to absorb water like a sponge would, and that's going to impact the way it behaves in your GI tract. And then insoluble fiber, again, neither, and this is what I always find myself saying to my students, neither one of them is being digested, right? So one of them is soluble in water, insoluble fiber is not soluble in water, so it's not going to swell and take on this different sort of characteristic when it goes through your system, but that is the other type. So we have soluble, we have insoluble. One of them swells in water, the other one doesn't. And then we have this other category that different terms for it. I don't know if you I learned it as functional fiber,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Sometimes I might synthetic fiber is a more sort of technical term. A faux fiber is sometimes how it comes out. So these are synthetically produced substances that are fiber-like. They may be extracted from a food source. So things like chicory root or inulin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think some people might see on food labeling. So that is a sort of manufactured type of fiber that is sometimes added to foods for a variety of different reasons. So sometimes it aligns with why you might eat a high fiber food. Other times it's there to help with the texture or the consistency of a food.
Right. And so it's something like that, what Dana's talking about here, like the inulin, it may be something in a probiotic drink, and we're going to get into why it is into that drink in a minute. But, we always hear that we're not getting enough of it, of fiber. And so how much fiber should we be consuming a day, and how much is really what the average Joe and Josephine on the street is taking in?
Yeah, so poor Joe and Josephine. They are falling very short. And again, I never label things good or bad. I actually think there's kind of a good reason that people don't get enough fiber. We'll talk about it. But here's the thing. So women need about 28 grams a day. Men need 38 grams a day. That's what the recommendation is. Very, very strong scientific evidence to support. That's what they need. The food label, if you look at a food label and it has that little 100 percentage, that sort of goal value, the daily value, that's actually based on 25 grams a day. So it's somewhere in that zone. So, if you could get somewhere in the 20 grams a day, guys should be going a little bit higher than that. That's what the recommendations say. It is linked to all these health benefits, which we'll talk about. The problem is that there's only about 10% of Americans that are coming anywhere near meeting those goals. I've seen data. There's probably a few different data sets out there, but I've seen that like the average American might take in closer to 10 to 15 grams a day, which is far below what the recommendation is. Do you hear that too, somewhere down
Yeah,
there?
it's in that, it's in a pathetic ballpark. That's what it is. But can you explain to everybody here why we're falling short on fiber?
So I have many theories. I think a lot of it has to do with I don't know that fiber is really really well understood. First of all, I think that they've heard the word before, they know that it is good for them in some way, and that's probably where it stops. As we had discussed right at the beginning, it's found actually completely in plant-based foods. So we know that Americans don't eat enough plants. So if you're not eating enough plants, you're not eating enough fiber. Um, the other thing is too is that I think a lot of high fiber foods affect your digestion, right? So I
Mm,
think we can get into this a little bit more later, but like there is a right and a wrong way to increase your fiber intake, and that might be a deterrent for some.
right. So basically, when you say plant food, so we know that you can get fiber from fruits, from vegetables, and from whole grains, legumes, beans, peas.
Seeds, yep,
Seeds, another good one there. So and we all know that most Americans are not getting enough whole fruits and vegetables in your diet and whole grains. So if you're not eating a lot of those food groups that have these, and beans is, I always say now, beans is a new chicken. Beans is like, everybody's eating beans, which is wonderful
totally,
because,
yep,
protein is still beans are still high in protein and you get fiber, so you get two for the price of one.
yep,
So, we're coming in slow or low than we really should be doing. And especially not only, we're not meeting it, but we know now that fiber has all these wonderful effects to help us fight certain chronic disease. And I want to just to clarify that while Dana said that there's two types, water soluble, I'm sorry, insoluble and soluble, a food will often have a combination of both, a plant food, but might have more of one type than the other. And some of these diseases that Dana's going to talk about, a more soluble fiber may help with a certain problem. So, Dana, take it away and start with the number one killer of Americans, heart disease. So, how does fiber? Here we go again. Remember, you don't break it down, you just poop it away. How does that help fight heart disease?
so yeah, and it's funny because I think if we said what breakfast cereal helps lower your cholesterol? Everybody knows what that is because it's brilliant marketing. And I love Cheerios as much as the next gal, but it's not, it's because Cheerios are made from oats and oats have soluble fiber. So people kind of already knew that people were onto this a little bit, but maybe they didn't know what the connection was. So soluble fiber particularly can actually help lower your bad cholesterol, which most Americans who have quote unquote high cholesterol, heart disease, they have that elevated LDL, that bad cholesterol. So what we know about soluble fiber specifically is that it actually, because again, it's not being absorbed, it's moving through that GI tract, it's actually going to block the ability for some of those harmful, bad cholesterol, whatever you want to call it, to enter your bloodstream. So there is a direct relationship there where people that have, and I think when people think about eating for heart health, they think about eliminating what foods can I not eat anymore? And this is an area where if you can increase your intake of soluble fiber, it might help it likely will help lower your cholesterol. Okay,
What
so that's the link.
What's so fascinating about that, Dana, is that here we go again, that it's not even absorbed. So you say, how the heck did it jump from your gut into your blood? But really what happens is it latches onto the dietary cholesterol that's in your
Hmm.
GI tract, especially the bile acids, the cholesterol bile acids, and you poop it out. So
Right.
then, your liver needs to make more bile acids. So where's it getting from? So it's going to pull cholesterol from your blood. So it's a fascinating that it doesn't even enter the bloodstream, but it has this effect. And it's a
Yeah.
soluble fiber. So we know oats and Cheerios. What other foods, like, so if someone had high cholesterol, what other foods would be great source of soluble fiber?
So those beans that you just mentioned, right?
Hmm.
So we can
Right.
we can look to beans for things like that. And I like what you said too about, so like I always use an apple as an example. So like when you think about a fruit, an apple, the flesh of an apple is going to have more soluble fiber, where the skin of an apple is going to have more insoluble fiber.
Right.
So eat the whole apple, right? And so when we see that with vegetables and certain grains and things like that as well. And I think what we haven't really talked about either is that the way fiber helps regulate your digestion. So we do see a difference in how, so soluble fiber, again, just think about something swelling in water, it's going to move a little differently through your GI tract than insoluble fiber. The way I tell my students, sometimes I tell them that insoluble fiber puts you in the bathroom, as this really lame way to try to think about, and so again, I think people think, oh, fiber just like makes you poop. Like I eat fiber and I have to run to the bathroom, and that's not exactly what's going on, right? So ideally you want a balance of those two different types of fiber, and then hopefully you achieve regularity, so to speak.
So what Dana is referring to is constipation. Okay, no one likes to be constipated. You're very cranky when you get constipated. So I think that's when people think of fiber, they think, oh, constipation, which is good.
Right.
It prevents constipation. But I have to tell you something. Do you know that Americans spend $1.5 billion on laxatives a year?
I
Billion,
believe
be
it.
it, and so here you go,
How
some
about some
oats,
apples, right? Yeah.
beans, apples, and oats is going to make you more regular and able to, have those poops be a little bit more regular. So there you
And
go.
you know what? And I think too, like the point too that is, I think there's something to be said for, yes, there are fiber supplements out there. There's even some data supporting how they can be, just as beneficial as food. But when we eat the food, we get the
Right.
other stuff too, right? So we're
Absolutely.
getting those other nutrients, right? And I think that's, we should focus. If only we could focus a little bit more attention there, as opposed to just trying to get the supplemental version, where we don't get the additional nutrients from.
Right. Okay. Now, diabetes, huge,
Yes.
huge, huge chronic health issue here in the United States. And not only diabetes, but pre-diabetes, which we've done the segments on this, is just unbelievable. So
Yeah.
how would fiber help with diabetes, for people who have
So,
diabetes?
so it's pretty amazing, right? Again, seeing all
Hmm.
these different diseases and all this benefit. So I think, begin is the fact that a high fiber food, no matter what kind of fiber's in it, is going to be more satisfying, right? It's going to
Hmm.
make you feel fuller longer, which is as a sports dietitian, there's a slight caveat where maybe we want something really fast digesting, but generally not, right? Generally, we want something that we're going to eat and we're not going to be hungry 5 minutes later, right? So that ability to slow down digestion, which we've said, fiber is going to do, also is linked to blood sugar control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a high fiber carbohydrate, there's more going on there, to oversimplify it from a digestive standpoint, but that's going to impact how quickly those carbohydrates enter the bloodstream. So if we can have more fiber in our diet, we have better blood sugar control, right? So whether we are at risk for diabetes, whether we have type 2 diabetes, blood sugar control is always a really important component of that, right? And so we definitely have this benefit of fiber being more slow digesting and therefore going to help maintain our blood sugar levels in a more consistent and less up and down sort of spiky sort of way.
So, Dana, what we're saying here, Ed, is that green beans are going to be better for you than jelly beans. Because, right, green
Right.
beans have the fiber, and the jelly beans are just pure sugar that be absorbed quickly. Where the green
Yeah,
beans still has carbohydrates, but you're going to be more slowly absorbed and won't spike your blood glucose levels so quickly. So again, helping with heart disease and all. I'm sorry, helping with diabetes also could help with your weight, right? And
yeah.
that's also going to feed into helping reduce your risk for type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So can you help us with the weight management?
Sure. So it's almost it's a similar sort of mechanism in the sense that you're dealing with something that's going to make you feel fuller longer, right? So if you are trying to have if you recognize that your calorie intake needs to come down, right? So we need to create a calorie deficit for there to be weight loss. There's different ways to do that, right? I think to have long-term success on weight loss, which is what ultimately we want, we don't want to be hungry. Okay, there's nothing, hunger is real, right? And so whether we're thinking about displacing calories or creating healthy snacks to get us through the day so we don't overeat later, there's a couple different perspectives to sort of look through it
Mhm.
for, but the bottom line is that fiber is going to make you feel fuller longer, and that can help you maintain your weight better.
Right. And also, when you're having more vegetables in your diet, you're going to get the fiber. And vegetables are really just full of fiber and water and a lot of nutrients, so they're bulky, and so they can help you, get full quicker. And so
Yeah,
that maybe you can, have less of other foods later on down after the meal or such. So that's good. So they're satisfying.
totally.
The last one is another hot issue that we've done so many episodes on is gut health and
Mhm.
probiotics. So explain to me, or explain to my everybody listen here, how fiber is important with probiotics.
All right. So we're back to this concept of we're not digesting it, right? And that it
Hmm.
is it is moving our way through our GI tract.
Hmm.
And here's where it doesn't sound super appetizing, but it's actually a really amazing process. So we know this discussion about the microbiome, right? We know we have this healthy bacteria in our gut, or that we have maybe healthy and unhealthy bacteria. And the goal is we want more healthy bacteria in our gut, right? That's really the idea is you want the healthy bacteria to outweigh the unhealthy bacteria or outnumber. So we find out that having the fiber and allowing things to move more slowly through the GI tract is going to cause fermentation, which again, here's where it's like, is that good or bad? It's good. You're going to get this increased amount of fermentation within the gut, and that fermentation is going to help that healthy bacteria flourish. And then we see that linked to all kinds of health outcomes, right? Better immune health, less susceptibility to illness. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, the science is continuing to evolve in how that healthy gut environment benefits your body all from head to toe in all other places. So a big role in there. So is this idea of having this additional fermentation for this slow movement of things through the GI tract, and therefore then we get more of that fermentation, which leads to more healthy bacteria.
Right. So really, the fiber is food for the healthy bacteria.
Yep,
So we're feeding that. We're feeding that and
there you go.
keeping regular at the same time. I mean, how much more can you ask for of one compound, right? There you go.
Seriously.
I heard, and I've seen this, and I know you know this, and I want this better explained to our listeners and viewers here, is you'll often see products that say net carbohydrates are blank, compared
Yeah.
to on the nutrition fact panel, you'll see, grams of carbohydrate. Then they say net carbohydrates, and it's usually lower than
Yep.
total carbohydrates. Can you explain what this is? And really, is it legit?
So, I mean, I think as many things, this is in response to the keto diet, the low carb craze, which just will still not go away. It just sort of reinvents itself in different sort of images. But yeah, so the I had to do some research because I had seen it before as well, but I didn't really understand it either. And like conceptually, so basically for a net carb, the way you see it promoted is like you take the total carbohydrates, and
Hmm.
remember, fiber does come from carbohydrate rich foods. I mean, there is a connection there.
Hmm.
So the concept is if you take the total amount of carbohydrate in a serving of food, right? Because you see this on a label, you subtract. So let's just say a food has, 10 grams of carbohydrate and it's got 5 grams of fiber. You subtract the fiber from the total carbs, and then you say the food has 5 grams of net.
Hmm.
There's also, I think, again, in my research, I learned that if there's like sugar alcohol, so again, sugar alcohols contribute slightly to a carbohydrate total. So they would to get net carbs, you take total minus the fiber minus any sugar alcohols if warranted in that particular food, and then you get what the net carb content of the food is.
Right,
um yeah, as far as I recognize, the FDA does not consider that like it's
right.
certainly not something that's like supposed to be on a food label. It's sort of like a sort of food manufacturers speak that is sort of catering to a certain audience. I don't know, you think that's a good way to put it?
I think that's the perfect way to say it. So don't worry, ignore the net carbohydrates and use that nutrition fact panel to see what the total carbohydrates are and how many grams of fiber that you're getting
Right,
from that.
go for the fiber,
Go
right,
for the
but you don't
fiber,
need to
right,
do the math, right,
right, right. We speak about going for the fiber. Okay, so here we went to like nobody was talking about fiber, and now there's this new buzzword called fibermaxxing. Can
Yep.
can you explain what fibermaxxing is?
So it's one of those, trendy phenomenons that's sort of taken on a life of its own. It has many sort of, there's several iterations that I have not found like a formal definition to this, right? Which we see on social media a lot. But it's basically this, kind of kitschy name for a concept of like eat a ton of fiber. Right. So it's this, and again, I can't say that I have a huge problem with it to a degree. I think we have to throw up some caution flags here, but it's really just this way to package it and say max out your fiber intake. So it's sort of identifying that people aren't getting enough. It's trying to shine a light on the fact that people should eat more. And then it's saying, just instead of underachieving in the fiber category, why don't you aim to overachieve and max things out, right? Which I would like, instead of fiber maxing, I say that I think we should work on fiber meeting, right? It's like let's meet those goals because we've already established there's a deficit there. I don't know, maxing, there is an endpoint where that could do more harm than good.
That's what I want to talk about because here we go again. We just want you to meet your goals, and now there's this trend maxing where people think if some is good, more is better. But
Right.
there could be problems, especially if you add a lot of fiber to your diet. All of a sudden, and you had low levels, and then all of a sudden you do this, whoa, adding 10, 20 grams of fiber to your day. So can you explain some of the problems with that?
Yes. So yeah, that I caution my patients, my students, even my readers. I basically put it like if you increase your fight too much too fast, you will be sorry, right? And it again because there's such a strong connection with fiber and digestion, and it could go a couple of different ways, but it would lead to some digestive woes, right? Digestive discomfort, like there could be cramping, there could be bloating, there could be gassiness. Again, you could go either way. You could end up with diarrhea or you could end up with a bowel obstruction. Again, like I'm going on every end of the spectrum here, but if your system's not used to managing that amount of fiber, you really do you can be much more successful by gradually increasing your fiber intake, and then you don't have to worry so much about the side effects from really big doses. because if your gut's not used to it, you're going to feel it for sure.
So, and you also need to have some water with it too,
Right.
right?
That's the other piece. So again, like because we're talking about things that are soluble in water and this, so more fiber means more water, right? And
Right.
and so again, I think generally that's a great thing. A lot of people probably need to drink more water like they need to eat more
Right.
fiber. But again, it's like if you just jump on the fiber maxing bandwagon here without doing a little bit more research or really understanding about it, it's like if you're going to increase your fiber, you should also be drinking more water to again, hopefully mitigate the risk of having some unpleasant GI side effects, right? Again, you don't want to make yourself constipated or anything.
Right. So walk us through a fiber meeting, not a fiber maxing, a fiber meeting day. So if somebody wanted to, start increasing their fiber, say at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, give us some foods. Let's start with breakfast. How could you add more fiber to your breakfast?
So, and I think people struggle when we're talking about this like parallel with protein. I think like protein at breakfast is really hard. I think fiber at breakfast is actually pretty easy, right? And so again, we at our disposal, we have fruits, vegetables, whole grains, I think, nuts, seeds, things like that. So I mean, oatmeal, right? We've already, oatmeal's gonna, make some overnight oats, make some oatmeal, add some fiber rich berries to it, sprinkle a
Mhm.
little granola or nuts or something like that along with it on top of it. So you could do yogurt, berries, granola. You could do
Mhm.
oatmeal with some nuts and some fruit. You could do dried fruit or fresh fruit there. And it would be a really easy way to increase it. There's plenty of, so again, this is where you want to pay attention to labels and check out your favorite breakfast cereals and see which ones have more fiber. And then again, add some fruit to it to increase the fiber content right there. I mean, truly anywhere you can add a fruit or vegetable to a meal. But the same thing, if you're more of like an egg person, I love to have eggs in the morning, but I'm always going to make sure I'm adding some vegetables and then going to have some sort of whole grain toast or bagel or some sort of whole grain item along with it. And then you got plenty of fiber right there.
All right. What about lunch?
All right. So again, if you're you, and I think to make sustainable changes, I want people to think about what they're already doing, and then how can we boost it with fiber, right? So it's like I really love a salad for lunch. Okay, but again, like, can we make sure? Can we do a little homework and figure out? Oh, tomatoes. Can we add beans to our salad? Do we
Hmm.
want to add some grains? Like we'll add some quinoa or some farro or some barley, which maybe traditionally people wouldn't think to add in a salad. But I would kind of take what you like. Are you a sandwich person? Do you always want a sandwich every day? Well, maybe we can switch up to whole grain bread, right? And maybe we could swap out your lettuce for spinach that has a depending on might have a slightly higher fiber content. So I would say like think about the things that you're already doing and then boost it from there.
And you can probably, instead of putting a spread, whatever spread, you mustard or something on a sandwich, you can put hummus.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
that's going to give it a little bit of protein and get some more fiber. All right, what about dinner time?
All right. So, and I think it's similar to lunch, but I
Hmm.
would think that I think more traditionally, still, so many people still do like the protein, the starch, like that
Hmm.
sort of thing
Hmm.
at dinner, which I think is great. So again, like where can you add vegetables, right? So maybe we try, could we get some potatoes in the mix maybe instead? I don't know why people don't always think, so like we always do like roasted potatoes or sweet
Hmm.
potatoes, with dinner or things like that. You do that in a salad and a piece of chicken or a piece of fish, you have a really healthy, balanced, high fiber meal. So yeah, I don't think it has to be so. There's so I think pasta has. I just wrote an article recently on all these different whole grain pastas, and there's so I mean, there used to be whole wheat and white, and that was it. Now we have pastas made out of chickpeas and things. So even just if you are a pasta lover and that's something traditionally that you like to have, you can add some vegetables to that dish and then investigate all the different blends of pastas because there's so many options now, and many of them have much higher fiber counts than they used to.
What about snacks? Because people are nowadays that they love their snacks and to the point where they may be substituting snacks for a meal. So give me some snack ideas.
So I would think that there's pretty much like whole grain versions of every sort of traditionally
Hmm.
non-whole grain snack food, right? So maybe there's something you could do there. Back to hummus again, which is a great way. So I mean, I think I always joke how like, pretzels are delicious, but maybe on their own they sort of leave a little bit to be desired, but once mix it with peanut butter or dip them in peanut butter or hummus, you get more protein, more fiber, and it makes it a lot more satisfying, right? Um, Fruit and vegetable at snack, I think, is a little bit daunting for people. I always challenge, especially the athletes I work with, to have fruits and vegetables at their snacks as well. And then they look at me like I'm crazy. But like, add raisins to your trail mix, add a handful of berries into your yogurt, add some hemp seeds. So again, the seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, things like that. There's a lot of easy ways that you can incorporate and sort of combine those things together to get fiber. Chia seeds in a smoothie, you're getting fruit, you're getting fiber, boom. So I think I honestly think it's a lot less daunting than people think especially when they're like, oh my God, I need to eat 20 more grams of fiber. It just seems overwhelming, but in small amounts, which is better for digestion anyway, it's really very doable.
Right. And listen, popcorn, how old is that? Popcorn is actually a whole grain, and a lot of people don't realize that. So it would be a better bet than maybe some just crackers or the pretzels, as you said. It
Yeah.
sounds like, Dana, though, as people are thinking about this and adding, what they may want to do so they don't go cuckoo and fiber max and get discomfort. If you're coming in really low, 10 grams, and you want to get it up to want to double it, maybe they should look to just take one part of their day to change. So maybe change your lunch, get used to that.
Yeah.
Then change your lunch and change your breakfast and get used to that. And change your breakfast, your lunch, and a snack. And so you can gradually adding more fiber in your diet, keep those fluids coming there so you can get yourself up, to where you need to be for all these wonderful benefits. And you're right. Dana, I have to smile that this is a trend, a trend fiber. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this now we have a trend we love and that
Yes.
and the
Like,
public needs. Hello,
we've been
this is
talking
great.
about this for a while,
Right, right,
yeah,
right,
it
right,
really is
right,
true. But
right,
at the same time, again, I'm not upset about it. I'm glad that
right.
there is a movement towards it. But it's like, dietitians are sitting around being like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So around 25 grams a day, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna borrow it. Instead of saying Fibermaxxing, I'm gonna say fiber meeting. Okay, and I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
steal that from you because I think it's absolutely fabulous. So Miss Dana Angelo White, you are just terrific, and I can't thank you enough for coming, sharing all your fiber wisdom with us on Spot On.
Yeah, I love talking to you, Joan. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, there we go.
All
Woohoo!
right.
You're
So
so
fun.
good.
You make it so